Welcome back. You're watching The Fix with me, Karima Brown. I'm in conversation with Father Michael Lapsley and Jaamia Galant. Now, before the break, I promised viewers that I was going to read from an extract of a letter from the SACC to the President requesting the opening of places of worship. And I'm quoting now from the letter. It says, "The Church supports the stage adjustment to the lockdown, tailored according to regional and sectoral needs upon which the government has embarked. However, our ability to contribute to our people's spiritual needs and therefore the nation's morale at this critical time, as well as the material contributions to people's welfare, which our social ministries offer, have been curtailed by a failure to recognize us as providing an essential service to communities in which we work. In this context, the SACC's National Church Leaders Forum now submits the following request to the consideration of the government." And then, of course, it speaks about one of the issues. Now, Jaamia, one of the things that the President did say when he said places of worship can be open for people of 50 or an amount of 50 was that religious leaders are seen as essential services. Now, Father Lapsley has just asked religious leaders to use this day of prayer to actually call on their congregants to stay at home. What is the Claremont Mosque's position on this? And are you happy with the fact that religious leaders have been designated as essential workers?
We absolutely are supportive of Father Lapsley's call. We do not support going to religious institutions. However, this is different to asking our religious leaders, our imams, to be part of essential services, because I think in this current context, there is a place for our religious leaders to be in support of communities, people who are suffering at the moment, those who are losing loved ones. So to officiate at funerals, I think there's still a place for them there. But I think more importantly even is to be able to allow for the movement of religious leaders to provide pastoral support to people who are ill. This is something that is very difficult for people to handle, to manage, and to have somebody, a spiritual leader to come and provide that support to families, and bearing in mind that they will do this at risk to themselves. So while we encourage, and would like for them to be able to offer this service, we are aware that they do this at risk for themselves, and so must also continue to practice safe social distancing or physical distancing, to wear masks, etc., but still would be able to move around in order to do that. And similarly, other essential services would include, for example, marriage ceremonies, which can continue under level 3 lockdown regulations. But again, this will be done with strict regulations of physical distancing and very, very small community or congregations, requiring only the witnesses that are necessary to solemnize the marriage. So, we welcome that part, but certainly support the call not to attend institutions. And so we will not open our mosques for funerals or for marriage ceremonies. All of these things can be conducted outside of places of worship.
Now, Father Lapsley, when I was debating this matter with quite a lot of people on social media, people said you shouldn't just look at the church or places of worship where people come, let's say, for a ceremony or a service on a Friday in the case of Muslims, a Saturday in the case of the Jewish community, or a Sunday in the case of Christian communities. The churches also provide other services such as counseling services, pastoral services, and so on. How does those services continue, given the fact that you are saying people shouldn't be coming to churches?
Well, let's be clear, the faith communities have never stopped playing their role, and I am delighted that the President recognizes religious leaders, religious people, imams and priests and pastors and ministers as essential workers. It gives a blessing to their key role And through phone and sometimes as essential workers, they can go and visit, people can call them. As my sister's saying, they can be mobilizing in terms of pastoral care, in terms of food parcels, even at great risk to themselves. So all of that, the faith community being the faith community, continues. And it's important that the nation recognizes, because especially at a time of death and dying, we all need the solace, the comfort, as well as the courage and challenge of our faith traditions and of the Almighty at this time.
One of the things, Jaamia and Father Lapsley, that is in this letter that the SACC had written to the President, it says that churches be considered for financial assistance under COVID-19 related provisions, including temporary employer relief schemes and others for essential church workers, that is ministers, who offer essential pastoral services, including workers such as caregivers and counselors. Now, some people will argue that this is the commercialization of religion. Jaamia, your view on the plea from the South African Council of Churches that religious organizations and their officials, that they be financially rewarded?
In the current context, there are people who have lost livelihoods, people who have become even more food insecure than they were before. And I think if we are to use the COVID-19 relief fund, for me, that would be the first place to go. Of course, all of us are, us being places of worship, we are all relying on donations from our congregations, from our communities. And I think that we should, continue to make that appeal to our own communities, to our own neighbors, to support their local mosques and so on. But I think to appeal to the COVID-19 relief fund for places of worship might be a place, might be an ask too far. This is my opinion, because I really do think there are people, there are communities, there are individuals who would benefit much more greatly. Many, many more families will be able to benefit from COVID-19 relief, particularly for those who have lost livelihoods, for those who remain food insecure, who remain below the poverty line. These were people who were there before and have become even worse in terms of their social and economic conditions today.
Father Lapsley, the question of the commercialization of the church and also the church being places of business, we see a lot of churches being places where people can make a lot of money. We've seen some bishops of independent churches asking to be compensated for monies lost. And then, of course, the big question has been, do churches pay tax? And if so, that is how they can seek relief. How should we interpret the call from the SACC that church officials and priests and pastors qualify for the COVID-19 grant?
I think it's up to us who are members of faith communities to make sure that the people who work in our faith communities survive. And I think that where faith or religion becomes a business, this actually leads to people's great disillusionment in faith communities. And we do have fake and false prophets in South Africa that are very well known, and there are those for whom it is big business. And I think God weeps when God sees that happening. But of course, I think one wants to distinguish when the faith community say some of us, for example, who were employed to work in care homes. It seems to me it's perfectly valid that they should have access to these funds. But I think I agree on the tenets of what my sister Jaamia is saying completely.
Now, one of the things that communities, such as faith-based communities, can do is, of course, assist. Jaamia, the sheikh or the imam that leads the Claremont Main Road Mosque, Rashid Omar, said that he would be happy to make the Claremont Main Road Mosque available to serve as places of, health refuge as hospitals begin to face the pinch for beds and so on. Is that something that the Claremont Main Road Mosque is going to continue to do or consider to do, and are you calling on other religious institutions to follow suit?
This is something that we seriously are considering. In fact, we're wanting to convene a meeting of the mosque congregation to consider this. And one of our thoughts was, given the position of our mosque, for example, in a business district in Claremont, it may be a little bit too small to offer it as a place with sick beds. But what we were thinking is that potentially it could be a testing center. But I think we want to consult with particularly health professionals and maybe even the city of Cape Town, but to be able to offer the mosque space that is currently standing empty and unused for the... Are there other ways in which we can use the mosque space in this current challenge that we're facing? And we do have the space, and I know that other mosques also have the space. We've got an atrium space, for example, which is not carpeted, which could actually be used as a testing center for people within the business district. But we don't know how health professionals would respond to that, what the protocols are, etc. We need to explore that. But we are certainly open to thinking about that and using and transforming the mosque space so that it becomes part of the solution, part of the response to the current crisis.
Absolutely. Father Lapsley, final word to you, 30 seconds. If you're calling on religious organizations to keep their doors closed, how else can they make a contribution?
Well, I think in every possible way. Firstly, every ministry of kindness, generosity, of compassion, food, counseling, but also the faith community is not just the leadership, it's not just the institution, it's every single member. And we all have a part to play to help to keep the nation safe, but also to care for each other in generous, kind, and compassionate ways.
All right, thank you so very much. That's Father Michael Lapsley and, of course, Jaamia Galant, both religious leaders calling on worshippers to not go to their institutions and to keep their doors locked. Of course, at 10 o'clock, the national prayer service will be happening. Up next year on The Fix, how to deal with corruption in the era of COVID-19. Stay with us.